Welcome to Business Rockstars. I'm Alex Wehrley, joined by Keith Krach, chairman of DocuSign. Thanks for being here.
Alex, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, good. Well, if you could just start out by telling us, for those who don't know, what is DocuSign?
Well, DocuSign empowers anyone to transact anything, anytime, anywhere, on any device securely.
So if you could tell me, how big is DocuSign now?
So on the DocuSign Global Trust Network, we have over 300,000 companies that have standardized on us, 200 million unique users in 188 countries, and we're putting on 2 million unique users a week.
And I know that you came on board when there were 50 employees, so obviously what you do is very entrepreneurial. Would you consider yourself an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. I've had the privilege of help building 4 companies, and I gotta say, DocuSign's my favorite.
That's awesome. So what would you say is your definition of being an entrepreneur?
I would say it would be taking something from nothing and to escape velocity. So it's one thing to invent things. It's another thing to innovate at scale. And that's the thing that I love doing.
Yeah, and you've done that, taken something from nothing and made it into a huge business multiple times. Were you ever afraid to fail during this process?
Oh, I think that's a big driver. You know, you're always afraid to fail. And it's just, you know, the way I look at it, that you've got to follow your fear. You've got to jump in water over your head. And after a while, and I call it scary fun, it actually becomes addicting.
Scary fun. Okay. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, jumping in water over your head. You don't know if you're going to swim or not. You don't know if there sometimes is a market, if your product's going to work. All of those things. It's a thrill.
And why do you think it's necessary to follow your fear?
Because that's when you learn the most. And if it was easy, somebody would have done it before. You know, you look at another company I started, Ariba. You know, it was just, we didn't even have a business plan. We just had some people, and now 1.3 trillion commerce goes through Ariba network on an annual basis, which is more than Amazon, eBay, and Alibaba combined. So, but in those early days, you just don't know.
Wow. Okay. So if you could create a startup toolkit, what would be within it? It can be more tangible technology. It could be a personality trait you think every entrepreneur needs to have. What would be inside?
Yeah. Well, first of all, by far, number one is I believe the company with the best people wins. Now, you have to give that company, those best people, time. In the business world, time equals money. So you've got to be able to raise some money. You've got to be able to fund it. But at the end of the day, I think in order to achieve escape velocity, you've got to build a high-performance team. So not only the best people, but also getting everybody to work together as a team, focus on a common mission. And then the third thing after that is set a crystal clear direction, which we've always done in all the companies with the playbook, the vision, the mission, the values, the team rules, the long-term goals, the strategy, all boiled down to execution.
If you could go back and give your early entrepreneurial self advice, what would you give yourself, advice-wise?
That's a great question. I think it would be, don't be afraid to make mistakes. And if you're not making a few mistakes along the way, you're not moving fast enough. And I think in today's high-tech world, the ultimate currency is speed, because it's not the big guys who are going to eat the small guys. It's the fast. It's going to eat the slow. I think the other thing, too, is that, you know, when you enter into a new market and you create new categories, it's all about being the leader. If you are the category king, you probably get 10x the resources, the market valuation, than the number 2 person. And leadership is not necessarily defined by size. It's defined by momentum.
Ooh, that's good. Who would you say is your number 1 mentor, and what piece of advice did they give you?
Yeah. Well, I had the honor of having John Chambers, former CEO and chairman of Cisco, as my mentor. I learned so much from him. And when I was running Ariba, we would meet once a month for breakfast for 5 years. And it was just like, Keith, you can ask me anything you want, anything at all. And I did. But the biggest thing that stuck out of my mind is I remember after about a year of doing this, he goes, Keith, I bet you're wondering why I'm doing this. And I go, that's exactly right. And he goes, well, let me tell you, here's the reason why, because somebody did it for me. You see, because when I came out from Boston, when I came out from Wang, I didn't know a whole lot about anything. And because somebody did it for me, and that was Lou Platt, the CEO of HP. He goes, God bless his soul. And I asked him the question. I said, why are you doing this for me? He goes, because somebody did this for me. And that's when John said, you know, that's the magic of Silicon Valley is give back, pay forward. And I think that's the magic sauce.
And it comes right back around, right? You benefit when you pay it forward.
By the way, absolutely. So, I mean, it's probably one of my favorite things to do is to mentor the young folks. And, you know, I always learn way more from them than I think they learn from me. And so, yeah, and that's what really keeps you sharp. And I also think that you really don't know anything unless you can teach it. So being challenged by another generation or even by a colleague, that's when you learn the most.
Absolutely. Where did the idea for DocuSign come about, and how have you helped further that idea?
Yeah, you know, it first came about because the initial focus for DocuSign was in the real estate business. And it's just so much paperwork, takes so much time, the signing ceremony and everything. And so it was an opportunity to unlock that value proposition. Now, if you talk to 90% of the real estate agents in the U.S., they'll say, oh, my God, DocuSign changed my life. And anybody run into it's like, oh, my gosh, I love DocuSign.
I have DocuSign.
I
can
love that,
attest
by
to
the way.
that.
Thank you. And by the way, we never take our customers for granted. And with that base in the real estate, then we went in the financial world to credit unions. And from there, you know, all the major big banks, all the insurance companies, healthcare, public, you know, telcos. And in Japan, they just changed the laws for DocuSign because they're in a war on paper and improve their productivity. So I think that following that formula of unlocking that value proposition and speeding up business, that's been DocuSign's key.
Yeah, cool. We're going to continue this when we come back from break in just a moment. I'm Alex Wehrley, and this is Business Rockstars. Welcome back to Business Rockstars. I'm Alex Wehrley, joined by Keith Krach, chairman of DocuSign. Thanks for being here.
Alex, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, good. So you've had a big hand in raising money for DocuSign. What advice do you have for our entrepreneurs watching and listening for securing funding?
Right. Well, I think the first thing is raise money when you don't need it. You never saw very rarely, I guess. I've never seen an entrepreneur come back and say, shoot, I raised too much. But I think perhaps the most important thing is it's not the valuation, it's who. So for example, DocuSign, our strategic investors are companies like Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, SAP, Visa, FedEx, Dell, Intel, country of Singapore, NTT, Deutsche Telekom. And this is a great way to form partnerships. All those companies are also enterprise-wide customers. We all have go-to-market strategies with them, and we do product integration. So it helps create that global standard. So it's the who more than the how much.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned that team is so important. You started with 50 employees when you came on board. How many employees do you have now?
I think we've got about 2,500 now.
Yeah, wow. So what are you looking for when you're building out that team, and what kind of work culture are you really wanting to create?
Yes. Well, you know, it's great because the DocuSign culture, I would say it has range. Everybody has range. So first of all, it's a very, very noble cause. We're changing the way business is done. We're simplifying people's lives securely. Our DocuSign Impact Foundation's mission is to transform people's lives by transforming noble causes. But also on that other end of the continuum, people who are DocuSign love to compete. They love to win. They love to put points on the scoreboard. And it's, and we always say you got to be funny if you work at DocuSign in terms of a self-deprecating sense of humor, which I think is a superpower. And especially if you're a leader, to be able to mock yourself out and admit your flaws, your weaknesses, your failures.
A little humility.
A little ego is your enemy, humility is your friend. So
I love that. So you alluded to the fact that you guys like to win, you want to be disruptive in your category. What does it mean to you to be disruptive, and how are you wanting to be that way in your category?
Yes, it's really interesting because our enemy is paper. About 90% of the time, when DocuSign goes in, we're replacing paper. And, we're always like on the disruptor list. And it's like, who are you disrupting, Keith? It's paper. Well, can you tell more about it? There's a lot of it. You just say more, anything else about it? It doesn't punch back. And, if you look at our customer base, it's these big global 2,000 companies that are being disrupted, right, by all these companies in Silicon Valley. So we accelerate their digital transformation. But also, on the other hand, is such a big customer base for us are these entrepreneurial disruptors where they've built on the DocuSign platform. And everybody goes, well, do you feel like an arms merchant or something like that? I go, no, our enemy is paper. Nobody likes paper.
I love it.
It's bipartisan.
Yeah, that is true. Well, thanks for what you're doing for entrepreneurs like us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it.
Alex, thanks so much for having me on your show.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm Alex Wehrley, and this is Business Rockstars.